Welcome to the assembly video for the Flycraft Stealth. Your boat will be arriving in a few different boxes. One for the raft, one for the frame and accessories, and one for the seats. The first step is to unroll your raft in an open area. You will want to make sure the valves are in the one-way position. You do this by pressing down on the valve stem and rotating a quarter turn to the right. The valve stem should be sticking up to indicate air can only flow into the raft. If the valve stem is depressed, this is the two-way position, meaning air can flow freely in and out. Using the pump, we will first inflate the raft just until the tubes start holding shape, but are still squishy. If using the E-pump, only inflate to less than 0.1 bar. Next, we will install the floor. Unroll the floor and make sure that the floor's valve is located at the rear of the craft. The rear of the raft is the more squared off end. The more narrow end is the front. Take your time to get the floor properly aligned and make sure to get the floor pushed all the way under the raft's tubes. A good way to line up the floor is to line the seams up on the floor with the seams of the raft. There should be a few inch gap between the floor and the ends of the raft. We will now inflate the floor to 0.5 bar. If you are using the hand pump, you'll want to get as much air as possible into the floor so that it's very rigid. After the floor is inflated, we will now inflate the rest of the raft to 0.3 bar. A good way to test air pressure without a gauge is if you can depress the rubber of the raft by about 1/8 of an inch with just your finger. There are multiple packages for the Stealth 2.0. This is the base package. This is the fish package. And this is the pro package. No matter what package you purchase, this video will cover the installation of all the accessories. We're going to start by laying out the frame. Make sure that the frame pieces with the anchor rope have the rope on the right side of the craft. Make sure the rower's seat piece is aligned with the seat mounting point on the bottom. The forward seat mounting piece needs to be aligned with the seat mount on the top. The gray sidearm with the anchor rope will also be on the right side of the craft. The Flycraft logo should be facing forward. At the rear of the craft, make sure the U-piece has the GoPro mount facing upward. Before connecting the pieces, we will need to apply a coat of grease to both the male and female ends. You don't need a ton of grease, but be sure to get a good layer down to help with assembly. After all the pieces are greased, we will first connect the rear U-bar to the rear rocker pieces. Make sure both pieces are aligned as seen here. Next, we will connect the rower seat piece. To do this, stand on the rower seat piece, align the two pieces, and raise them evenly so that they both go into the frame evenly. We are going to move away from the rower seat and now connect the oar arm pieces to the front angler seat piece. With both left and right oar arms connected, pull any slack out of the anchor rope, line up the oar arms with the rower seat piece, and lift them into place the same way we did the rear of the craft. If you ordered the base package, this is your hardware kit. If you ordered the fish or the pro package, you will have received tool-free thumb nuts as well. For the standard hardware, both the nut and the bolt are 7/16. When installing the hardware, you will want to install the bolt with the bolt head facing out and the nut on the inside of the frame. For the tool-free hardware, you will also install them with the bolt head on the outside and the thumb nut on the inside, except for the bolts connecting the rear U-bar. For these, you will want the bolt head on the inside and the thumb nut on the outside. Go through and install all the frame hardware. We find it's best to insert all the bolts first, and then go back and tighten them once they are all in. Once the frame is assembled, look on the bottom of your seats to locate the seat hardware. Seat mounting screws are in a bag taped to the underside of the seats. If you are not finding them there, check the bottom of the box in case the bag fell off during shipping. These are used to mount the swivel to the seats. We will start with the front seat. Before mounting the swivel, rotate the plates to expose the mounting slots. It doesn't matter what side of the swivel you mount to the seat. When installing the swivel screws, first get all 4 screws started, then carefully tighten them. Go slow with these screws because if you tighten them too fast or too hard, you can potentially strip the mounting holes. For the base package, the seat swivels will mount directly to the frame, the small washers on top and the large area washers on the bottom. Get all 4 bolts and their washers installed and then adjust the seat location to your desired position. We like to line the edge of the seat directly over the end of the seat frame piece. This makes it so that you can brace the back of your legs against the frame for added stability when standing. For the Fish and Pro packages, there are quick release plates included. We will use the same bolts and large area washers to mount these to the frame instead of mounting the swivel to the frame. You can choose to use these seat quick releases or just mount the swivels directly to the frame as previously shown. Line the quick release up on the mounting rails with the release tab facing forward. Once the quick release is installed, you can push the tab down and slide the seat swivel into the plate. The swivel isn't a perfect square, so if it isn't sliding in easily, rotate the seat a quarter turn to find the side that fits the plate. The easiest way to install the rower seat is with the frame on the raft. When placing the frame on the raft, you will want to line up the bend at the rear of the frame with the rear rocker of the boat. Remember that the square end is the rear of the craft. Once the frame is on the raft, the process for installing the rower seat is the exact same as the front seat. Install the bolts with the small washer at the bolt head and the large washer on the nut side. Find where you want your seat located and tighten the 4 bolts. You can then slide the seat into place. There are 5 straps used to attach the frame to the raft. The longest strap will be used on the rear. The 2 inside D-ring patches do not have included straps. Feel free to use these for additional straps to the frame whenever in whitewater. Typically, we just use them to clip or strap extra gear into the boat. First, install the straps loosely and make sure the frame is centered before tightening the straps. Attach the rear of the frame to the D-ring at the rear of the raft. If you ordered the Fish or the Pro package with the gear rack, you can skip this step. Last item for the base package is to drop the oar locks into place and secure them with the lock ring. Before you take the raft out on the water, you will want to untie the stopper knot in the anchor rope. We tie a knot in the anchor rope so that it doesn't pull through the frame during shipping or assembly. For safety precautions, we recommend untying this stopper knot. This way, if your anchor ever gets stuck in the river bottom and you need to free yourself quickly, you can pop the rope out of the cam cleat and let it run through the frame. To assemble the oars, connect the blades to the oar shaft and make sure the button snaps into place. Bang the oar against a carpeted floor to help it snap into place. Take the rubber oar locks and slide them onto the oars starting at the handle. Slide the oar locks down until they are at least over the rope wraps. When putting the oars in the oar locks, make sure you start with the blade first. The oar shaft is too thick to go through the top of the oar lock, so you start with the choke point of the blade and slide it in. For the Fish and Pro packages, we will now install the gear rack. Align the rack on the frame so that it is centered and pushed up against the GoPro mount. Mount the gear rack to the frame using the 2 short wraps at the front of the rack and the long strap to connect both the frame and the rack to the rear D-ring. There are specific cutouts designed in the gear rack for mounting your pump as well. To install the anchor pulley, simply open the pulley, attach the anchor rope, and secure it with a carabiner. Remember that once the carabiner is not on the pulley can fall off the rope, so keep that in mind when you are out in the field. In the hardware kit for your lean bar, you should have 2 2 3/4 inch bolts, 6 2-inch bolts, 2 2 1/4 bolts, 3 1-inch bolts, 8 washers, 13 nuts. You will also receive a couple drill bits, a locking pin, a pin leash, and a lift stop. The 2 drill bits are for the previous generation frame. If you have the 2.0 frame, you will not need to do any drilling. We will also need a 7/16 wrench and a socket. A drill makes it a lot easier if you have one. The parts of the lean bar are the tower, the base plate, bar channel, and the lean bar itself. Step 1 is to install the bar channel on the lean bar. Line up the holes of the channel with the holes on the lean bar. You will use 2 of the 2-inch bolts and 2 of the 2 1/4-inch bolts, as well as 4 nuts. No washers are used for these. The 2-inch bolts go in the vertical holes, and the 2 1/4-inch bolts go in the horizontal holes. You will want the vertical bolt heads on the top of the channel, and the horizontal bolt heads will need to face outwards. Install all 4 bolts first, and then tighten them fully. Now we will mount the tower to the base plate. Line the tower up on the base plate with the Flycraft logo facing out. You will use the 3 shortest bolts and 3 nuts to secure the tower to the base plate. When installing the tower, place all 3 bolts in their location and install the nuts loosely. There will be a small amount of float in the hardware, and you will want to make sure that the tower is completely flush with the base plate on the left side. With the tower in place, you can now tighten the 3 bolts. Next, we will install the base plate to the raft frame. You will want to remove the front angler C-piece from the frame to make access to the bolts easier. Align the base plate on the frame, and using 4 of the 2-inch length bolts, 8 washers, and 4 nuts, we will mount the base plate to the frame. You will put a washer on both the head of the bolt as well as on the nut side. Install all 4 bolts and leave them loose. Once all 4 bolts are installed, we will start by tightening the side bolt first. Then we will tighten the 2 rear bolts, and finally tighten the forward bolt last. This helps to ensure a proper fit.
First, but before you do that, make sure the back is touching the frame. Tighten, tighten, tighten. And then this is last. You'll see it when you tighten it. You'll see it kind of come down a little bit. And that's what you want.
Next, we will use the 2 3/4-inch bolts and 2 nuts to mount the lean bar to the tower. Place the rod and channel into the tower and line up the bolt holes. Install the rear pivot bolt first, but do not tighten. Before installing the second bolt, we will install the locking pin. Raise the lean bar into position, depress the button on the locking pin, and insert the pin. With the lean bar in position, we will now install the lift stop spacer. When tightening the spacer into place, put a little bit of force on the stopper so that it pushes down on the lean bar channel. This sets the lift stop so that it is perfectly in line with the locking pin when the lean bar is raised. Tighten both the lift stop bolt and the lower pivot bolt. Take the leash and attach one end to the locking pin and one end to the tower. Reinstall the angler seat piece to the frame and let us know if you have any questions. When installing the motor mount, you will only use 4 of the 5 bolts in the package. The center hole of the motor mount is only used for our X and Guide model boats. The 2-man Stealth motor mount is secured with the 2 shorter bolts in the vertical positions, and the 2 longer bolts will go in horizontally. The longer edge of the motor mount will face out and the short edge faces the raft as seen here. Install the shorter bolts in the 2 outer vertical holes and install the nuts but do not tighten. Next, install the longer bolts in the 2 horizontal slots and install the nuts. You can now tighten all 4 bolts. If you are planning on motoring, you will need to register your boat. In order to register, you will need your hull identification number, or your HIN. This is located in the rear of the boat, immediately above the Flycraft logo. Installing the rod holder in the 2-man Stealth. The parts of the rod holder are the reel box, rod sleeve mount, faceplate, rod sleeves, and a strap. The tools needed for this installation are a Phillips head screwdriver, a 7/16 wrench, and an 11/32 wrench. The hardware kit comes with a pair of drill bits. If you have an older model frame, you may need to drill the holes for the reel box to mount to the frame. If you have a new boat, your frame comes with these holes pre-drilled. Step 1 is to remove the front angler seat from the frame. This makes the installation much easier. You will drop the reel box into the space on the left side of the frame. There will be a slight bit of play between the frame and the box. We will use a washer between the reel box and the frame to make it a snug fit. Insert the forward bolt first and install 1 washer that will be between the frame tube and the reel box. Next, raise the frame so that the head of the bolt stays in place. You can use a piece of tape or just push the bolt on the ground. Take the reel box and slip it into place, and line up the second bolt hole with the rear of the box. This bolt may or may not need a washer between the box and the frame. Small differences in paint thickness is why we give you multiple washers. Use whatever amount you need to make your reel box secure with as little play as possible. Tighten these bolts and reinstall the forward seat piece to the rest of the frame. Next, we will slide the rod sleeve mount onto the rod sleeves. The front of the mounting plate is the face with the 2 holes for the sleeves. This will face forward when installed on the raft. Slide the sleeves into the mounting plate from the front towards the back. Slide them all the way up to the beveled edge. We will then secure the rod sleeves in place with the faceplate. Install the 5 screws and nuts, and tighten slowly to ensure they all tighten evenly. When tightening these screws, make sure they are snug, but do not over-tighten, because over-tightening will crush the tubes. To mount the rod sleeves to the frame, remove the bolt immediately behind the rower's seat. This is the hole that will be used for the mounting plate. Slide the rod sleeve through the rocker bars and underneath the gear rack if you have a gear rack. The rod holder can be used without a gear rack as well. Reinstall the bolt that we just removed and tighten. Restrap the frame to the raft, and using the strap included in the rod holder package, strap the rod sleeves to the rear of the frame or the gear rack. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our customer service team at cs@flycraftusa.com.